Good afternoon, YouTube. Just following up after my last video, a couple of questions that got chucked into one of the Facebook groups was how do you select the right size Victron MPPT? Now, anybody who's a Victron fan probably already knows this. It's very obvious information once someone tells you, but effectively the model number tells you the size of the MPPT. Just for the sake of it, trying to answer all of these questions at once if I can, is generic versions of this question are, will my MPPT work with X? Can the X MPPT take X panel size? Will the X panels charge my X battery? All generic versions of the same question. I'm just gonna... So the first thing that you need to do when you're going to ask these questions is you need to give people some understanding of what you're trying to achieve. So the first thing is, when you're going to ask this question is, what batteries have you got, right? Like the chemistry is important, but probably not as important as what voltage is your battery bank, right? Because the model number is actually made up of two of the specs. The first spec, the 150 in this case, is the panel voltage. The second is the current going to the battery. And the reason that they're giving you the current to the battery is that most of these MPPTs can operate on multiple voltages. So there's a very good bet that if you've got a 150 rated MPPT, 150 volts in, that it will probably work on up to a 48 volt battery bank, or in the case of lithium, 52 volt nominal up to 58 volts charging. So when you are asking about Victron MPPTs and you say, well, you know, can I put 2,500 watts onto this charger? Well, first you've got to ask yourself, what size battery have I got? If you've got a 12 volt battery at, you know, and it can only take in a very low amperage, well, that's actually your target. So you whatever target current you intend to charge the battery bank with, take the nominal voltage, the charge voltage. So in this case, the battery is 12 volts, so it'd be like 12.5 volt nominal. But we charge it at 14.7. So 14.7 times the charge current is how much you will be charging the battery with. So the 45 on here is, once you know what battery voltage you got, if it's 12, 24, 48, it's 45 times your battery voltage will roughly tell you how many solar panels you can put on the other side. This number here, the 150, is the configuration that those panels can be in. So if these were 45 volt or 44 volt open circuit panels, and open circuit, not operating voltage, because when they're sitting idle, that's the voltage they'll be at. It's very common to find house panels that are 44 volts. If that's the case, then you've got 44, 44, and 44. So what's that? 88, 132, is it? 122, is my maths correct? 132. 132 volts. That's perfect for this, because panels are obviously affected by temperature, which means their efficiency can go up with cold temperature. So if you're in a sub-zero location, this thing might have a open circuit voltage of 44, but you go out on a freezing day when the sun is out and lots of light is hitting this panel, you might find this panel's at 47. So being careful not to over provision the MPPT is important as well. So in a nutshell, the model name is actually the size of the charger. So you can see in the background here we've got Solar Smart 150 by 35s, and they've got their voltages here, 12, 24, 36, 48. There is some, like this MPPT 100 by 50, that is a 1224 only. So as I mentioned on the previous slide, there is some that are only low voltage. There is also some that are low voltage that just strangely go up to that can go onto a higher battery, right? Like the 100 by 20 in the background here, that can go to 48 volts randomly. I'm not sure why. But so realistically, depending on your deployment strategy, like are you reusing secondhand house panels, right? Like that's an excellent source of cheap solar panels, but they're relatively high voltage. So most automotive MPPTs will not work with it, or they will, but only for a short period of time. So the Victron MPPTs are a really good option for recycling X house panels. one of the caveats of these things is that the input voltage has to be 3, 4, maybe 5. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head. It's definitely in the data sheet, but it's got to be X voltage above the battery bank that you're planning to charge. So if you had a lithium battery bank like we do, in the morning it's quite often at 52.5 volts. So the solar would have to be at 57.5 in order for the process to start. So that might be why you would choose, instead of going for 100 or a 150 volt input, you might go for the 250. The downside of that is so you've got like 2 panels in series here, 3 panels in series here. You could have up to 4 or 5 panels in series here to increase the voltage. Right? That means that the charge process might start earlier in the morning. It means that instead of having you might have, to get this 35 amps here, you might have 3 panels in series, and then you might have 2 lots of them. That increases the amps coming down the wires supplying the solar power. So here, you might be able to fit the same amount of panels, but have 4 in series instead. And you could potentially have less amps coming down the line. So your total cost of install could drop because you use smaller cabling for the solar side. But then you deal with the issue that if one of these panels gets shaded, that whole string is no longer producing power, right? So there's caveats and pros and cons to choosing one or the other. Personally, I have got a 250 by 100, a 150 by 100, and a mixture of other 150s. I love the 250. 250 is great. So the output only being in amps, as we discussed, the different MPPTs work on multiple different batteries. I've only listed 2 here, but you'll start to see the difference. One of the best things I like most about the Victron gear is that it leaves it open for you to upgrade later. So let's say, for example, you've got a camper van or a caravan, and it's running at 12 volts, and you've got a 12 volt 35 amp charger, right? So in reality, that is 14.7 volts at 35 amps when it comes to charger throughput, because that's the voltage that it's actually going to be operating at, in order to create a big enough voltage differential that the charger actually pushes power into the battery. So knowing that we've got 35 amps worth of capacity, we can come down here, and I've already done the math somewhere. The 150 by 35, I've got that around the wrong way, haven't I? Oh no, here we go. The 150 by 35 MPPT could have an output of 1,029 watts at 24 volts or 514 watts at 12 volts. You don't have to drop the input voltage down to suit the 12 volt battery. The MPPT will do that for you. But you can see that by doubling the output voltage, the MPPT can actually output twice as much power. So if you're buying these things and you're doing a brand new install, you should absolutely start at the highest voltage you possibly can. So if you can start at 48 volts, start at 48 volts, because these things will run more efficiently at 48 volts than they will at lower voltages. That is reflected in the data sheet. So we've got the data sheet here for the nominal PV power, 35 amp, 12 volts is 500, 24 is 1000, 36 is 1500, and 48 goes to 2000 watts. That is a significant difference from a 12 volt battery to a 48 volt battery. So this thing is your friend. This is the data sheet. It's readily available. If you're curious about what any of these things can do, there's your answer. I mean, that won't stop people from asking, and if you're unsure or you don't know how to interpret the data sheet, you should absolutely ask. But I mean, the bulk of the information is actually in the name for you, so it's very straightforward. So the solar panels, will X solar panel work on X MPPT? Well, we know that the MPPT's input voltage is this 150 just here. So do we use the open circuit voltage or do we use the maximum power voltage? You always use the open circuit voltage. Whichever of these is higher, effectively, should be the answer. And you should always leave yourself a little bit of wiggle room. If I jump to the next slide, you'll see this Renogy data sheet. Well, this is actually the sticker on the back of the panel, not even the data sheet, actually has a temperature coefficient on it. So this could go up and down by upwards of 0.28% per Celsius. So what is does it say here what the standard temperature is? Oh, it's covered up. Of course it is. Yeah, but that tells you that this could change. So if you were at negative 10 degrees, then you could expect this panel to probably produce significantly more power than, you know, its 100-watt rating. So and that stacks, right? So here we've got a 22.3, 22.3, and 22.3. So that's this panel here. We might string 3 of those together so that we can charge our 48-volt battery bank off of it. That means that we have a 66.9 volt open circuit voltage, which is well within the 150 volts. So happy days, right? We can that works just fine. And it means that we would have a potential of 300 watts. It's a potential because it's on the solar side. So we don't, what the throughput will be determined by this current and the voltage that the battery is operating at on the other side. So I hope that sort of I hope that makes it easier for you to decide which MPPT that you need, or maybe I've just made it entirely confusing, who knows. But if you feel like you need more information about choosing one of these MPPTs, feel free to leave a comment down below and I will get back to you.